Hey guys, Big Nate here, back again to review the final 5 episodes of Agatha All Along, the much maligned Disney Plus Marvel series. And to me, it's very much deservedly so, as we'll find out as I go through each of these episodes. I warn you again that I am biased against this show, and that bias will make its way through this review. This is not an open and fair review. This is a biased review. Okay? So, Agatha All Along, episode 5. Let's get into it. I wanted to start this review, or release it, rather, a few days earlier, but the US had this little election going on, and I knew it would clash with that, so I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. So, Agatha All Along, episode 5. We open with Agatha tied to a stake and her mother and the mother's coven attacking her. But this attack goes very much wrong as their energies are ripped from them and given to Agatha. We then go to titles. We have an unnecessary recap because I don't think anyone who's not watched the show is watching these episodes. It's not like this is TV. We get the rejects from the Cirque du Soleil in the Salem 7 poncing around. We get some exposition with a side of pro-infanticide before we get some empty feminist propaganda about commercialism of witches for Halloween. That the show is commercially exploiting. It's like they don't see what they're doing. The Salem 7 close in on them, and they decide to create brooms to escape. But as they make their way into the air, the road pulls them down, and they get forced into the next challenge that looks like a cabin from Friday the 13th. Agatha wants a speedy resolution to this challenge, but this is her challenge, so she has to go through it the same as everybody else. Rio obviously knows more than she's letting on here, and they have a Ouija board literally thrown at them. They get a rundown of the basic rules. Agatha reluctantly starts. The first quote-unquote spirit that they summon is Miss Hart, but it turns out it's just Agatha messing with them. But in the spirit of her messing with them, she gets taken over by the spirit of her own mother, who aggressively attacks the others like she is the demon-possessed girl from Exorcist. They have the same color palette, eyes and everything. Like this is an homage to The Exorcist, and all it made me want to do is actually go back and watch The Exorcist. The ghost of her mother then gets excised from her, and her mother then says that she'd wish she'd killed Agatha as she was born. It's a wonderful family that she comes from. You can see why she's as messed up as she is. And the ghost tells them the only way to finish the road is to finish it without Agatha, which Rio objects to. The ghost goes into Agatha again and attacks her friends. Alice, the protection witch, defends them only for Agatha's innate magic to affect her, and this is bye-bye for Alice. It is only when we hear the voice of Agatha's son that she stops. Because Wiccan has gone to the Ouija board and has done something and then moves the token to goodbye, and that ends the possession. And they gather round Alice's corpse. And for no reason, Agatha's told all these women what her weakness is. Don't attack me and my powers won't kill you. they all start getting aggressive with Agatha, and they all attack. And it's not just like something that comes out of nowhere. She's literally warned them before. So I don't know why they're so surprised that this has happened. Wiccan says if being like Agatha is what it takes to be a witch, then he doesn't want it. And she asks if he's sure about that, all creepy like, telling him he's just like his mother. Then things go sideways as Wiccan takes control of the others and throws Agatha into like a bog or quicksand before tossing the other two witches into another. The camera pans up to his face and we see he's got a crown very much like the Scarlet Witches, and Rio is nowhere to be seen. This episode is a 2-star episode. My second favorite character was killed, and overall this episode was bad. Like, it's bad in the context of the show. It's like people have forgotten everything Agatha has told them mere hours before. Don't attack her, and my magic won't kill you. The road is going to be aggressive. Be watchful for it. It's over and over again that there's like they don't learn anything. And I think this show is starting to delve into the most anti-feminist show I've ever seen, because these women seem wholly incompetent at being what they're supposed to be. And that massive diatribe at the beginning of feminist propaganda and patriarchy and commercialization of witches and undermining, it's like, well, the majority of modern day witches have nothing to do with ancient witches. These are Wiccan women who have picked up this nonsense from the 1970s and are claiming it's got its origins all the way back in the Middle Ages with witches who were maligned. And no, that's just nonsense. It is all nonsense. Modern day witchcraft is all nonsense. And that's what this show has been so far. All nonsense. I'm hoping it picks up as the episodes go on, but we're getting closer to the end, and it just feels like they've run out of ideas and they're starting to ape ideas from better films and series. We'll see how this goes, but this is definitely a 2-star episode. And we move now into Agatha All Along, episode 6. Billy's backstory. We find out his name is officially Billy in the show, but I'm just going to keep calling him Wiccan. I may intersplice it with Billy every now and again, because it's the same sort of thing. And we find out that, the W Maximoff on the toe tag at the first episode could potentially have been Billy. Ooh, yeah. No, it's trying to set something up for later episodes, and it's not really worked for me. We find out that he's a Jew. I don't know if he's an Orthodox Jew, a Hasidic Jew, or any other denomination of Jew, but we know that he is a Jew. And he's going through a ceremony. I'm not sure if it's a bar mitzvah or something else, because he seems pretty old to be going through a bar mitzvah. And we go straight into the after party. He gets his fortune told by Lila, who tells him some very shocking information. We get a power surge. She says something cryptic, and he leaves. The party's then interrupted by the end of WandaVision, and we find out that Billy gets taken over by Wanda's underage son after a car accident. He jumps into his corpse, or at least potential corpse. It could be that he was unconscious and that allowed him to take over. I don't know. They don't really go into it here. We also know that Billy here is in a homosexual relationship, something a 10-year-old, that's how old Wanda's son was, cannot consent to. So how much of that is him and how much of that is the body he's taken over? The relationship itself gets a bit glossed over as Billy starts to delve into magics after the incident. We get a little parody of the Deep Throat from old Cold War TV series, again aping something else, where we find out that Wanda's gone, and so are her twin kids, and Vision could be being taken apart by Sword or Shield or any other organization that has grabbed his body, and that's for those who didn't watch WandaVision, and I don't really care. Wiccan then goes deep in the research, and then goes to Westview, and we get to see episode 1 from his point of view. And when that ends, we see Agatha has dug her way out of the bog Billy has thrown her in. He no longer has his crown, for some reason, and he crushes the runic token he has, and Agatha can now finally say his name. Agatha gives him shit because she knows all along, or at least suspected, that he was the son of the Scarlet Witch, and talks about killing people, and then compliments him on surviving. And it comes off a bit like it's something she tells herself every day to make up for the bad decisions she's made or to cope with the trauma of her own life. But she's more than likely manipulating him again, as that is something Agatha does. She asks him what he wants at the end of the road, because it can't be power, because he has power in abundance. And they end up walking the road together, and he says that he wants one thing that he knows the road can give him, and that is his brother back. This is another 2-star episode, and I'm pushing it to 2-star because we finally get some of the explanation that got leaked before the show started. I'm a bit iffy with how accepting Jewish parents would be to having a homosexual son, because I know they've got a lot of laws, the same as the Christians and the Muslims do, about how that much is a sin. So I don't know if that's going to play into it later on in the series. And no one seems to comment that Rio is still missing, except for Billy, which Agatha dismisses, so she obviously knows there's something more going on with her there. But yeah, this is not a good episode. This was a exposition-heavy episode. I prefer to have something like this be interspersed throughout the other episodes of the series, and then you can spend as little time on his backstory as possible because, well, you've already got the important snippets. This felt like an unnecessary episode, like they were padding out the series. So yes, 2 stars. I think this is going to be the standard for this entire series. We move now into Agatha All Along, episode 7. We see a quick recap of Jen and Lila being thrown into a bog, and then we see Lila in a pink Glenda-like costume falling into darkness. And you already know that this is going to be a Lila episode, and I like that because Lila's the only other character I like in this series right now. We jump to Agatha and Wiccan taking the road and walking. She's talking about Wanda and is trying to set him off, but she gives no concrete answers, and we get a sad gay joke about, if you want a straight answer, ask a straight woman. Very funny, ha ha ha, everybody laugh. And we get a new challenge, but this time, the building is a lot more gothic, and I mean Germanic gothic. It's a castle rather than a country club or a mansion, and we get more gay parody as they are now dressed inexplicably as Maleficent and the Wicked Witch of the West, because of course the gay man couldn't be the Norn King, one of the few omnipresent, amazingly powerful dark wizards from the Disney canon. He has to be Maleficent because he's a parody of a gay man. So now he's dressed in a terrible, pitiable drag outfit. Agatha says that she was the inspiration for the Wicked Witch of the West. He tells her to prove it. Agatha points out to the table at the center of the room. It's made of stone, has the inscription words, "Your path winds out of time." And we see a deck of cards. This is so painfully a Lila episode that it sets it up that way as well. As he puts cards on the table to tell his own tarot, swords start to fall from the roof. Agatha, getting impatient and not wanting to be impaled from above, grabs the cards and starts throwing them all onto the table, saying it's just a numbers game and that they have time. And then the ceiling begins to drop like an Indiana Jones trap from the Temple of Doom. For those who've seen that film, as if they can do anything original in this series anyway. We cut to Jen and Lila. The latter of the two gasps that she was falling. It is evident here that she is out of sync in time and talks to Alice, then Agatha, then her grandmother. Alice and Agatha from 2 of the earlier episodes, but this is the first time we see her grandmother. She seems like a formidable woman, and I'm liking this aspect, getting a bit more to know about the character. Lila has a moment of trying to explain her power to Jen, then she jumps forward to Agatha on top of her and a sword, presumably in the chair that she was sitting in. She then attacks Wiccan, who is confused because he thought everything was cool, and then they have a conversation, and they are both dressed in garbs from Disney properties, or at least famous magical ones. I'm unsure if Disney has actually got the Wizard of Oz movie rights because they're using those costumes. But Jen is firmly dressed up as the evil queen in her ugly hag face. I don't know why they didn't dress her up as the evil queen in her most radiant and beautiful phase, because she's a beautiful woman. Why would you dress her like a hag? She tells them that she saw who he was, what would happen, and who he would become when she was doing his tarot in the previous episode. And then she begins flashing through time again, back to her grandmother, who tells her her task is not to control what is seen, but just to see it. Then we jump back to before they were met with Agatha and Wiccan in the underground with Jen, when she finds Wiccan's book and explains why she stopped having such visions. Very much like the Constantine movie, where you had the twins and one was always seeing and the other one kept denying and denying and denying until she could no longer see. I think this is a similar sort of thing that's happened here. They hear Agatha and they move through the bookcase and everything seems to be back in sync again. And the roof is still dropping. Wiccan wishes Lila was there and they burst through the bookcase. Now everything is lined up in time. Agatha points out that the roof is falling with a bad pun, and Lila sets to work and asks who's the querent, to which Wiccan, ever the parody of a homosexual, says that he's the querent. Haha, very funny, everybody laugh. She states the basic rules, the querent shuffles the deck, and now they need a question. And in the annoying faux panic, he asks her if he's William or if he's Billy. And then the roof stops. She explains how it's going to work and starts with who he is. Pulling the first card, the magician. And now what is missing? The sun card. Then the path behind, the third card. But that's interrupted by a time jump. She talks to her grandmother again and then realizes that she has and will fall. So her grandmother asks, what's she going to do with her remaining time? She jumps to just after she's pulled off the road by Wiccan. She briefs Jen before they hide from the Salem 7 and then calls Jen her sister in the craft. This convinces her. She then realizes that she shouldn't be reading for Wiccan, but for herself. So she starts again, and this is supposed to be the bring it all together moment about the odd things she's been saying in episodes previous to this. It works a bit, but not the way I think they wanted it to. It's not as smooth as they thought they were going to be. And then she reveals that Rio is actually Death, and that is a good reveal. That was very good, yes. The Iron Maiden opens to let the others out, and she reveals who Rio is, that she is Death. She gives Agatha a cryptic advice. When she calls you a coward, hit the deck. She gives Wiccan his book as he goes through, and then Jen goes through and she closes the Iron Maiden, sacrificing herself to stop the Salem 7 and to save her coven, because that is what a seer is supposed to do. We then have a flashback of her having her first lesson with her grandmother back in Sicily. I think I should have come to terms with this series killing all the characters I actually like and then have any sort of depth or character to them. But Lila here was fantastic. This episode was, I think, the best episode of the series. I'm giving this a straight 3.5 stars. This is the best so far. It does a lot to pull together some of the weirdness that happened in the previous episodes with Lila, but it's still fundamentally flawed because they couldn't quite pull it all together properly with the time jumps. I like the introduction of the grandmother. I liked her stressing over her power, because if you have this power, you would absolutely stress like this. It is an excellent explanation of her abilities. I think the major flaw is that they dress them up as these idiotic characters. The Wicked Witch of the West. Ooh, it's Agatha, she's wicked. Wiccan dressed up as Maleficent. And Maleficent is one of the most evil characters in Disney. I don't give a damn about those stupid Angelina Jolie movies. Maleficent is an embodiment of evil and evil magics. To me, and to a lot of other people. So, having him dress like her is just like, well, Billy's obviously a bad guy then. We have Lila as the good witch Glenda, I can see that. And Jen as the ugly version of the evil stepmother for some reason. I don't know who picked the costume to dress her like that, but I feel that it's disrespectful to her and her character, as well as the actress. Why they couldn't dress him as the Norn King, I don't know. It would have taken 5 seconds of a different sort of cloak, and that would have been it, because of what they dressed him as. But, c'est la vie. As I said, 3.5 stars, the best episode so far. Let's see if this series can continue with this energy, though I have my doubts. Let's start Agatha All Along, episode number 8. We open with Alice being taken by death. She sees her own corpse and laments that she's just broken her curse. She can finally be the witch she knows she could have been all along if she didn't have it. But then Death tells her that she was a protection witch, and she did what all protectors do, put her life on the line for those she was protecting. Death then marches her on to the next life. A bit nihilistic, we don't see any grand meeting with her mother, but Marvel never really showed Death until Taika Waititi did Thor Love and Thunder. We go back to our intrepid adventurers here. Jen is banging on the doors of the Iron Maiden as Wiccan and Agatha run down the steps. Wiccan decides to go back with Jen, who he confronts about what she's doing. She turns to talk to him, then turns back, and the Iron Maiden doors have become a solid earth wall. Lila is gone, and Jen and Wiccan spend some time together, lamenting over that. Agatha, as she escapes and gets back onto the road, gets confronted by Rio, aka Death. She confronts Agatha about how unnatural Billy is, and then drops that the road was imaginary, and then about her son, and to Agatha, the truth about her son was much worse than any of the fictions that the witches that have heard of her have ever come up with. Jen and Wiccan come to terms with their losses, and Rio wants Wiccan before he brings his brother back as well. But she cannot simply kill him because he will reincarnate and try again. He needs to turn himself in, and turn himself in willingly. Agatha proposes a deal as she accepts it. We cut to Wiccan and Jen, and they continue down the road. They find their shoes and say F the road and put them on. They wake up in body bags. Wiccan and Agatha manage to get out of theirs easily enough, but Jen struggles, and Agatha stops Wiccan from helping so as not to steal her struggle. Here, we find out that it was Agatha that had bound Jen's magic, not some powerless man, but Agatha herself with some charms. And she immediately blames the patriarchy, as like most feminists do, they like to blame everyone else for their own issues. Jen rips out some of Agatha's hair, binds her hands together, and unbinds herself in a very anticlimactic way, but then she suddenly vanishes. Agatha tells Wiccan when she asks where she's gone, well, she's fulfilled her wish on the road, so the road has let her go. And Agatha tells him just enough to get him to follow her spell, and goes through a vision quest sort of thing so he can find his brother. He closes his eyes and then finds his brother in the body of somebody else who is being drowned, or prank drowned, in a swimming pool. I never got that joke when I was younger, and I don't find it funny now. And that he then laments that he may have had that boy killed to put his brother's soul in him, and Agatha laments that sometimes boys just die. She opens her locket after he disappears and the road cracks, and she pulls out a small strand of hair and a single seed from a dandelion. She plants the dandelion and seed in the crack and then cries over it, and she somehow gets out by doing this. There's no like magic spell. It's not suddenly, oh, here we are outside. Death says that she didn't follow through on the deal and then threatens death by 1,000 cuts, shattering a window and having the shards of the glass carve her up. The Westview natives lament that shenanigans are happening all over again. Agatha tries a protection circle after seeing the moon in the fire phase. That is unsuccessful as Death blows away the sand that she's using in the circle. Then Lila's warning comes to her forefront. When she calls you a coward, hit the deck. Death calls her a coward, Agatha hits the deck, and a kitchen sink or a fridge gets blasted out of her house, which she narrowly avoids. Death then hamstrings her, slicing the tendons in the back of her ankles with more glass, as she grabs water from her hose trying to heal herself, but is interrupted before she gets killed. She is saved by Wiccan, who allows her to take some of his power to re-empower herself. She, Death that is, blasts Wiccan away and Agatha goes to fight her before she enacts her plan. She pretends to give him to Death before she tries to drain Death herself and ends up killing herself. She then slowly, in slow motion, passes out onto the ground and decays almost instantly, her body forming a cairn of mushrooms and flowers as her body is completely decayed into the earth. Then Death dismisses Wiccan as he picks up Agatha's locket. And he just literally goes home from here. Walking past the Westview natives, he puts his hood up, walks into his car, and drives home. He opens the door, his parents ask where he's been and why he's injured. He has a shower, goes to his room, and then we see him have the realization that he made the road all along. We then hear a familiar cackle coming from behind him. Episode ends. So we go from the high of the last episode, and it's 3.5 stars, to a doldrum low of this one as 2.5. It is not good at all. Jen unbinding herself is woefully anticlimactic, and finding out that it was Agatha and then she's not taking revenge in some form seems a bit anti-purpose to what she was talking about earlier, about how she hated the one who did it to her and wanted some semblance of revenge. But the road boots her off before she gets the chance. didn't like that she didn't at least get some piece of Agatha for doing that to her and binding her for over a century. The battle between Death and Agatha is, well, it's bad, it's boring, it's something I would expect to see out of a Charmed episode in the 90s, not something from a high budget Marvel property. And Wiccan being tossed around like a rag doll is also a bit of an annoyance because he's supposedly super overpowered because he can twist reality to his will, yet he's being tossed around by Death like it's nothing. It just seems a bit rushed towards the end here. So again, 2.5 stars. It would have been 2 stars, but they actually completed Jen's story without killing her, so I'm happy with that. Now we move on to Agatha All Along, episode number 9, the finale. We open in the past. It's Agatha's backstory, which we should have had interspliced in the episodes leading to this episode. It feels like this is going to be another one of the episodes that is a filler episode and has no real importance. We see Agatha give birth, and Death is there, but the Immaculate Child only has a short time to live. He would have been born stillborn, but she made a deal with Death to have some more time, and Death, for no reason, says, yeah, okay, you'll get more time, but that's all I can give you is time. We see her habitually killing witches for no reason other than to increase her own power, and it is never explained as to why. We find out here as well that the Witch's Road song was made by her son to trap other witches for her to steal their power. They always also live with the spectre of death hanging over them, as none of them know when she's going to come and claim Agatha's son. Then one night, his time comes up and Death leads him away. We then get a montage of Agatha committing mass murder through time with the joke Witch's Road. Agatha is back as a ghost. Wiccan turns round and we see Agatha in all her floating glory, looking similar to how her mother looked in episode 6. And it's made him realize that he is responsible for every death that happened on the road. Then Agatha tells him he saved Jen. So he didn't kill all of them, but if you think about it, he's actually got 7 more deaths on his hands than he realizes because he also wiped out the Salem 7. So he's got a lot more death on his hands than he thinks about. We see Jen dig herself out of the ground, smile, her hands glow slightly to reveal that, yeah, indeed her magic is back, and then she flies away, happily to continue to con people ever after. Agatha echoes what she said to him earlier: if you want to be a witch, you gotta get used to this feeling. He says he never will, and she says, we'll see. We jump back to him going to Agatha's house, where he goes back into the basement. He immediately attempts to banish Agatha's soul using a spell from his book, but he is unable to do so, as the road portal glows ominously underneath him. Agatha wants something from Wiccan, the locket that he took in the previous episode. She slaps it out of his hand, picks it up and attaches it to herself. And we get a little bit of chat between the two of them. And then he decides to do something different than banish her. He enacts a different spell and turns the pentagonal portal into a memorial stone for the 3 members of the coven that died, including Mrs. Hart, Lila, and Alice, though nothing of the Salem 7, whose corpses also litter the road. He then decides that Agatha's going to be his guardian spirit as the 2 of them make their way into another portal, because they're going to go find Wiccan's brother and reunite the 2. Huzzah. Huzzah. I give this episode 2 stars. This finale was bad. And this entire series, I'm giving a standard rating of about 2 stars to 2.5 stars. We had 2 episodes that were pointless filler that could have been interspersed through the other episodes. We've had not many or even any attempt at any great magical feats here. This entire series seems like a very poorly made, poorly written episode of the 90s version of Charmed. I get told that the character actresses in this series are some of the best actresses in the world. Where are their performances in this? All of their performances were stiff, were unemotive. Agatha herself had no character development. She didn't change from the beginning to the end. She still got what she wanted the whole way through. She cheated death and became immortal, which is what she'd always wanted to do, which is the reason she had the Grimhold. We have Billy, who, well, is he evil? Is he good? We don't know, because they didn't do a good enough job of characterizing him, but all we do know is that he's a whiny gay parody of a character. The 3 only good characters in this series were Jen, who survived, Alice, who went on a very good character journey in her episode, getting over her curse and the death of her own mother in a fire that she watched, and Lila, who we saw unravel and then come back together again as a stronger character for it before her death. These 3 characters are the anchor for the series, not the titular Agatha, not Rio, and not Wiccan. And the Salem 7 never presented themselves as villains worth the name. They apparently wanted revenge on Agatha for murdering their parents in Salem, as some of the characters that she tricked into trying the witch's road. But that's it. We never got anything else from them. We never got any backstory, though they're a hive mind of witches with one goal in mind, and that's to hunt down and kill Agatha. We saw them and they were pathetic. These characters would barely register as villains against Hawkeye. There was no menace in this show. They tried to make the menace the road, but it didn't work. They did multiple different parodies or homages to other horror franchises that all fell flat and failed, and made me want to go back and watch those films and not this series. It was one compounding failure and annoyance after another that didn't really do anything and petered out at the end. I can see why Disney cancelled this series before it even aired. It is not good. And for all these people saying that this is going to be the gayest Disney Marvel project ever, there was very little gay in there that wasn't some form of parody. We saw a lot of feminist jokes in here that fell flat on their face because these are supposedly omnipowerful witches that are apparently allowing a patriarchy to tell them what to do, even though they have the power to overthrow it anytime they like. This makes no sense. This entire series was a waste of everyone's time and talents. This money could have been sent elsewhere to do good, but it wasn't. It was wasted here. What a terrible show. If you want a recommendation for a good show about magic or a good film about magic that you can sit down, enjoy, that has characters that go on an arc and a journey that changes them from the first to the last, then I would highly recommend the Christopher Lee film, The Devil Rides Out. It has got a better magic system, the menace is there, and the characters go on a journey or an arc that makes sense. This show did not. It's unfortunate that so many so-called A-list actresses had to waste their talents and damage their credibility on this show. They are all worse off now for having been in it, and I feel genuinely sorry for them. This is Big Nate. This has been my review. This is my chronicle. Big Nate out.